Hey guys, tonight we begin with something quiet, something brushed gently into place with pigment and patience. You're in the low light of dawn, somewhere deep in a Mayan city, probably 800 CE, and the jungle's breath is still rising in steam from the earth. You hear the scratch of woven sandals on stone. A parrot squawks somewhere overhead. And well, you're late again. You pad into a small courtyard, warm from the night's heat, where your master, an aging Mayan scribe, with paint on his elbows and absolutely no sense of humor before his first cup of cacao, is already hunched over the day's work. He doesn't look up. He never does. That's part of the charm. You slide into your low stool and reach for the morning water basin, cooling your hands before touching anything sacred. The scribe's writing hut is cramped, shaded by palm thatch, and smells like damp bark and chilly smoke. On one side, the walls are stacked with folded screenfold codices, accordion books made of bark paper and coated in fine lime plaster, each one a precise record of ritual calendars, family lines, or what day to plant maize so the rain god doesn't get annoyed. On the other side, pots of ink, bundles of brushes, and a quiet gourd of ants chewing on dried honey for pigment making. You probably won't survive this job, not because it's dangerous, unless you poke yourself with a poisoned thorn, which, honestly, has happened, but because the hours are terrible and you're only allowed to speak when spoken to, and you get spoken to once a week, if you're lucky. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still with me, drop your location and the current time in the comments. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach for the unfinished codex, a folded sheet of paper made from the bark of a fig tree. Well, paper might be generous. This stuff is stiffer than last week's tamales, but once it's coated in powdered lime and smoothed flat with a river stone, it becomes a surface worthy of the gods. Your job, at this stage, is incredibly technical and not at all glamorous, outlining glyph frames in red ochre, just the rectangles, over and over again. A kind of divine Excel spreadsheet. Your fingers already feel sticky with heat. The red pigment came from ground hematite, a lovely rust colour that smears if your hands sweat too much. And of course, they do. You are 10 years old. You are always sweating. The head scribe clears his throat, a subtle cue that it's time for cacao. You take the clay cup, warm with crushed beans, chilies and honey, and hold it out with 2 hands. He takes it without thanks, and you return to your outlines. In this world, writing isn't just a skill. It's a sacred obligation. Scribes like your master are intermediaries between people and gods, between kings and ancestors. Every glyph must be just so because the gods themselves might read it. In fact, according to many Mayan beliefs, the glyphs are alive. They walk, they speak, some even dance. This is why you take your time, why every little swirl and dot matters. The word for scribe in classic Maya is tsib, meaning the one who writes, but really it means the one who listens with a brush. Historians still argue whether all scribes were elites, members of noble families trained from childhood, or whether especially gifted artisans could rise through practice alone. Either way, you know one thing for sure. They never stop working. Even during feasts, your master sketches glyphs in the dust with his finger. Sometimes he forgets to eat. You, meanwhile, never forget to eat. That's your small rebellion. There's a rooster crowing somewhere in the distance. Your hands are covered in lime dust and ochre. You accidentally smudge a frame and your stomach tightens, but the scribe doesn't look up. He's deep into a depiction of Chak, the rain god, whose moustache curls like a shrimp and whose eyes bulge with purpose. You watch as your master layers turquoise pigment, probably made from powdered copper minerals, onto Chak's headdress. The effect is luminous, even in the dim light. That turquoise doesn't just symbolize water. It is water, in a visual language older than your bones. There's a kind of peace in this repetition, in the smell of lime and fig bark, in the quiet pressure to be precise, even if nobody says a word. You feel your breath slow. You trace another red frame. You hear the scribe mutter to himself about a misplaced syllable from yesterday. He says, "t," instead of "t," which is technically a different word. You try not to roll your eyes. The gods will probably forgive it. Outside, the cicadas start to warm up, and a faint scent of roasting maize wafts in. But in here, you're still in the world of ink and brush, of silent syllables and painted time, of hands that shape history, one red frame at a time. You pause to stretch your fingers, which now carry a fine line of ochre beneath each nail, a badge of honor in this slow, steady life of glyphs and glosses. The morning sun slants across the writing hut, golden light catching on tiny flakes of lime plaster that drift lazily through the air like snow. You cough once, quietly. Lime dust isn't exactly great for your lungs, but there's no other way to make proper hoon, the sacred Mayan writing paper. It begins, oddly enough, with a fig tree. Not the sweet kind you eat, but the wild amate tree with bark that peels in fibrous sheets, like skin after a sunburn. You've helped strip it before, dragging long curls of inner bark into soaking basins filled with water, river mud, and a pinch of lime made from burned seashells. The smell is unforgettable. Earthy, sour, vaguely ancient. Once soaked, the bark is pounded flat with stone beaters until it turns into a spongy, pale sheet. It's a noisy process, rhythmic and exhausting. You once watched an older apprentice beat bark for 3 hours straight without blinking. You assumed he was dead by the end, but it turned out he was just really into his work. Once flattened, these sheets are sun-dried and then coated with fine lime paste, which gives them a white surface smooth enough for painting. The result is something sturdy, foldable, and eerily beautiful. Not paper in the way you think of it today, no fluttering pages here, but a canvas that folds like a fan and holds stories like a memory palace. Historians still argue whether this paper-making craft spread from the central lowlands of the Maya to other Mesoamerican cultures, or if it emerged in parallel elsewhere. Either way, your people treat it with reverence. It's not just a tool, it's an offering. You run a fingertip along the edge of a blank hewn sheet, feeling the tiny ridges where 2 bark panels overlap. You know the sheet will be trimmed later, but there's something comforting about the texture, like the palm of an old hand. You've even caught yourself whispering to the paper sometimes, asking it to be kind, not to soak up too much pigment, not to smear under your trembling wrist. Your master used to joke, well, in the driest possible way, that no Mayan codex was complete without at least one accidental bloodstain. Between the lime paste, the stone blades, and the occasional ritual thorn, it's not an unlikely outcome. In the corner, a fresh stack of folded screenfold books rests, each one weighted with a carved figurine, some shaped like maize gods, others like crouching jaguars. These figurines aren't there for decoration. They hold the books in place so they don't curl while drying. Plus, let's be honest, it looks cool. Your next job is folding, a task you'd think would be easy, but no. Each codex needs to be creased at precise intervals so the panels align like the beats of a drum. The folds form the rhythm of the story. One page off, and suddenly the sun god appears at night. Or worse, a royal genealogy overlaps with a pig. Sacrifice, which has happened, which was awkward. You reach for a bone tool, probably from a deer, and begin scoring the panels lightly, preparing to fold. The screenfold structure is unique, more like an accordion than a scroll or a modern book. This lets scribes open a section of the cosmos while keeping the past and future folded at their sides. And make no mistake, this isn't just storytelling, it's architecture. Each glyph has to align across folds, each deity's head must be centered, each calendar date boxed and balanced. It's like math, but messier. A small lizard skitters across the floor as you crease the first fold, your eyes scanning the surface for any imperfections. The bark has cooperated today. A good omen. You imagine the paper is sighing in relief, grateful to be part of a story instead of kindling for the temple fire. There's a knock at the hut entrance, a soft, rhythmic tap. Another apprentice brings a damp cloth for softening the next stack of bark sheets. The cloth smells like chamomile, probably to keep the insects off. You nod at him in silent solidarity. Paper doesn't make itself, and writers rarely get the glory. But paper listens. Later today, your master will inscribe a passage recounting a royal accession, probably full of pomp and feathered headdresses. But right now, it's just you, the paper, and the warm hush of the morning. You press the final crease with a slow exhale and place the folded codex in the drying box, a woven tray lined with palm fronds. You place a small clay weight atop it and whisper something you heard the older scribes say when they thought no one was listening. May your folds remember the sky. Silly. Maybe. But it's hard not to feel like these books do remember, like they hold more than pigment, as if the bark retains the sunlight it once grew under, and the lime recalls the shells of long-dead sea creatures, and the fold remembers the first hand that bent it. You glance again at the drying books and the figurines holding them still. Your favorite is a tiny monkey holding a brush, likely a nod to the god of scribes. He looks mischievous and proud, as if he knows his place. In the story will last longer than yours. Still, there's something peaceful in that. You don't have to be remembered to be part of memory. The smell of pigment hits you before you even lift the lid of the cedarwood paint chest. Earthy reds, inky blacks, pale yellows, like crushed flower petals in sunlight. You open it carefully. It creaks with age, and inside, all the colors of the world rest in small burnished shells. Each shell cradles a pigment, hand-ground and mixed with tree sap or honey. They shimmer faintly in the morning light, especially the blue. Ah, the blue. Maya blue. If bark paper is the body of the codex, Maya blue is the soul. It's a color that doesn't quite exist anywhere else. Not sky, not sea, but somewhere between the two, like a promise made visible. You once asked your master how it was made. He responded with the usual shrug and one of those maddeningly cryptic Maya proverbs. If the gods wanted you to know, they'd have written it in blue. Later you learned it was a mix of indigo dye and clay, palygorskite, heated until the molecules fell in love and refused to let go. To this day, modern scientists still debate the exact chemical sorcery behind it. Some claim it was a happy accident. Others argue the Maya knew precisely what they were doing. You'd put your cacao beans on the latter. You select a thin reed brush, the tip chewed just enough to split the fibers into a point. Not too soft, not too stiff. Your master always said a good brush is like a good dog, loyal, responsive, and never pees on your feet. The day's first glyph is a date, always a date. Time anchors everything. The long count, the tzolkin, the harb. You've memorized the cyclical ballet of numbers and gods. Today, you're writing about a solar eclipse that happened generations ago. An event once feared, now rendered calmly on a folded sheet of bark with a pigment made from crushed wasps and cochineal bugs. As your brush touches the paper, the black ink flows like a shadow, smooth, predictable. You remember how the ink is made: soot, gum, and a bit of orchid juice if you're lucky. The orchids give it a faint sweetness, barely detectable, unless you're the sort of scribe who occasionally licks the end of their brush. No judgment. The glyphs begin to take shape. Spirals, squared-off knots, the proud jawline of the sun god, his rays drawn like skeletal fingers. You're careful with the spacing. Maya writing doesn't flow left to right like modern scripts. It dances in paired columns, top to bottom, zigzagging like a clever snake avoiding hot stones. Each glyph is a story unto itself, sometimes a syllable, sometimes an entire word, sometimes an idea too dense to explain. That's part of the magic. It's a writing system that rewards daydreamers and puzzle solvers. which makes you wonder if that's why so many scribes squint all the time. Your hand cramps, just slightly. You shake it out and pause to sip a bit of a toli, warm maize drink with hints of vanilla and ash. The drink settles in your stomach like a small, polite fire. Back to work. The next image is of a priest astronomer gazing at the eclipse through a stone ring. His robe flutters. His hair is tied in a knot shaped like the planet Venus. Historians still argue whether this specific robe design was symbolic or just trendy among the elite. You like to think it was both. Fashion and fate have always been good friends. Now the brush dips into the blue. You hold your breath, even though you know the paper is ready. Blue always demands reverence. You touch it lightly to the edge of a water glyph. 3 wavy lines, a stylized frog, and a drop about to fall. The paint settles like a sigh. As you work, the world fades. The heat of the hut, the hum of insects outside, the distant laughter of children chasing something through the market. It all softens. All that remains is the paper and your brush, and the soft exhale of 1,000 years of stories waiting to be remembered. Occasionally, you drift into memory. You think of that traveling scribe who once showed you how to paint a jaguar's eye with only 3 brushstrokes. You were 13, still nervous around sharp tools, and he had this huge gap-toothed grin that made him look half puma himself. He smelled like lime juice and tobacco. Said the trick was not in the brush, but in the silence between strokes. You try it now. The jaguar appears, slowly, on the lower left panel, a symbol of the night sun, of stealth, of royal lineage. 1 curve, a dot, a tilt of the brush. There, that flick of shadow beneath the eye. That's the 3rd stroke. Silent, invisible, perfect. You pause to blow gently on the paper. The paint dries quickly in the heat. You smile a little. It's going to be a good page. There's something comforting in knowing that your hands are doing what other hands have done for centuries. That long after your dust, someone else might open this codex, carefully, reverently, and run their eyes across your brushwork. Maybe they'll laugh at your slightly wonky star glyph. Maybe they'll marvel at your jaguar eye. Maybe they'll just sneeze from the lime dust. No matter. You'll be there, in the curl of a glyph, in the glint of blue. By midday, the light shifts, softer, filtered through the palm thatch roof, casting warm dapples across your workspace. You lean back for a moment, stretch your legs, and listen to the lazy rustle of banana leaves outside. A parrot somewhere is arguing with a monkey. Again, lunch is still an hour away, but your stomach has ideas of its own. So you nibble on a tamal wrapped in corn husk, a simple one. No turkey today, just beans and a pinch of chili. The chili clears your sinuses and wakes you up just enough to return to the codex. Today's section is a calendrical commentary. To the untrained eye, it's a stack of boxes and dots and animal heads. To you, it's a kind of music. The Maya didn't just keep time, they courted it. Days had personalities. Some were lucky, others best avoided unless you wanted your maize to mold or your canoe to flip over unexpectedly. You begin sketching the glyph for Khan, a day associated with abundance, ripe fruit, and youthful energy. The glyph resembles an ear of maize wrapped in flame, at least that's how you see it. You shade it with a mix of ochre and soot, grounding its fire in the dusty earth. And now, onto the marginalia, the commentary of the scribes. Here's where things get deliciously weird. You flip to a narrow side panel where you're tasked with adding what can only be described as a cosmic footnote. It's a record of a celestial event, maybe a comet, maybe a trick of the light. Historians still argue whether this passage describes an astronomical anomaly or a heavily fermented vision. Either way, your instructions are to draw a jaguar, vomiting stars, tastefully. You smile. These are your favorite parts. The serious scholars of future centuries may fret over chronology and context, but you know the truth. Maya scribes had a wicked sense of humor. Hidden in the sacred calendar texts are tiny jokes, grumpy remarks about the weather, even doodles of disgruntled gods holding their sandals in the wrong hand. You once saw a codex where the moon goddess was clearly cross-eyed. Whether it was intentional satire or just a sleepy apprentice's mistake is anyone's guess. Either way, it made you laugh, which is what counts. The next glyph is Chikchan, the serpent. It slithers elegantly along the page, coils flowing like wind-carved sand dunes. As you paint, you think about the role serpents play, not just as symbols of renewal and lightning, but as bridges between worlds. In many texts, serpents are portals, their bellies open into visions. Maybe that's what you're doing now, offering a portal. Some scribe in the 9th century drew this same glyph. Some modern researcher might squint at your version and note the angle of the jaw is slightly off. But the meaning flows on, uninterrupted. You're just one link in a glittering, inky chain. Suddenly, you hear the soft tap of feet. It's your apprentice, a clever girl of maybe 9, already better at drawing deer than you were at twice her age. She holds out a bundle of fresh ametal paper, her fingers stained purple from crushed berries. Did I do the folding right? She asks. You inspect her work, tight accordion folds, edges aligned. Not bad at all. A little crooked on the last fold, but nothing tragic. You hand her a bit of honey as a reward. She accepts it solemnly, then scampers off, muttering something about drawing a snake with feathers. Your heart swells. The work will go on. Returning to the codex, you feel that pleasant drowsiness that comes from too much sun and not enough water. You sip from a gourd filled with pozol, fermented maize drink that tastes like wet bread and old dreams. Perfect. You reach the final glyph of the page, Ajah, the Lord, the King. This one must be perfect. Crisp lines, symmetrical curves. It's a name glyph, and names are sacred. Get this wrong, and the wrong spirit might show up when the book is read aloud during the ceremony. There's a story, half believed among scribes, that once a novice confused 2 glyphs, one for sun and one for howler monkey. At the next royal blessing, the howler monkey spirit descended and refused to leave. Ruined the feast. Bananas everywhere. You finish the glyph with care, steadying your hand. Then you close the paint shell and sit back. Another page done. Your shoulders ache in that satisfying way, proof you've earned your afternoon nap. But before you rise, you add a single dot in the corner, your signature. Hidden, humble, just a mark. There's no fame in your line of work. The priest speaks the words, the noble holds the title, but your brush guides memory, and that's enough. Outside, the sky darkens, not from storm, but from the eclipse your page just commemorated. People are gathering in the square, draped in obsidian shawls. The conch shell sounds. It's time. You rise slowly, your knees cracking like old bark. The codex will rest now. Later, it will be placed on the altar, and when the chanting begins, your jaguar eye will gleam under torchlight. Your eclipse will pass overhead, drawn in ink and pigment and faintest blue. The scribe never takes center stage. But you're the quiet heartbeat behind the thunder. The conch shell's low moan fades into the background as you slip through the shaded walkway behind the temple. The ground is warm underfoot, the stone paths still holding the sun's kiss. Around you, the hush of anticipation grows. Soft murmurs, rustling cotton robes, the occasional squawk of a heron perched rudely where no heron should be. You're not required for the eclipse ceremony itself. That's the realm of the priests, their robes heavy with jade beads and ritualized seriousness. Your part is already done, ink dried, glyphs correct. You double-check the jaguar's teeth, and the codex now resting on a carved wooden stand at the edge of the altar. But you linger nearby, tucked under a slanted canopy of palm leaves, because you can't help but watch. It's not just the spectacle, the darkening sky, the sun slowly swallowed like a ripe fruit. It's the way everyone around you tilts together toward meaning. The Maya don't see eclipses as random. They are omens, portals, hungry mouths in the heavens. And though you're not technically supposed to believe everything you draw, well, sometimes the art convinces you. The crowd murmurs as the light fades. A thin wind picks up. Birds hush. Even the howler monkeys fall eerily silent, which you take as a deeply personal gift. The priest begins to chant in a rhythmic, looping tone. You can't make out every word. It's ceremonial quiche, half poetry, half spell. But you recognize the cadence. It's the same one used in the codex you just finished. The Eclipse Invocation, preserved word for word from a scroll dated nearly 300 years ago. You copied it line by line yesterday, tracing the ancient glyphs, steadying your hand when the priest's name appeared. Itzamna. Some scholars argue whether Itzamna was an actual person or just a title recycled by generations of priests. The records are slippery. Some carvings show him as a man, others as a spirit. One particularly strange mural depicts him as a frog with human arms, pouring stars from a bowl. But the chant is always his, or its. As the light dims further, people bow their heads, palms upward, faces calm. You watch a group of women nearby touch their fingertips to their hearts, then to the earth, then the sky. It's said this gesture harmonizes the body with the cosmos. You try it quietly, just once, and feel oddly better. Maybe it's the pozole, or maybe the frog god really is listening. The sun is now a thin sliver, a bright rind, a lemon wedge dipped in ink. And then, gone. Gasps ripple through the square like a soft breeze. Some children cry out, a dog howls. But overall, there's peace. The kind of respectful awe that comes from watching something far bigger than yourself unfold exactly as your people predicted it would. Your master once told you that a true scribe must learn the rhythm of the world. Not just the words, the rhythm. How days stretch and fold. How the moon hides, then reappears. How time, like paint, is layered. Not linear. You never understood what he meant until now. The eclipse holds for several minutes. The priest raises the codex briefly, just high enough for the edge to catch the darkness, then places it back down. A ceremonial bat is drawn in the sand nearby, symbol of transition, guardian of the liminal. A child sneezes. You smile. Then slowly, light returns. It's not immediate. It creeps, a lazy unpeeling. Shadows lose their edges, colours blush back into the world. First the blue of feathers, then the amber of maize, then the soft pink dust of the temple walls. People exhale together. The ceremony ends not with trumpets, but with a long shared sigh. Relief, joy, maybe a tiny bit of cosmic smugness. You drift back toward your workshop, letting the tide of villagers carry you part way. Someone hands you a small clay bowl filled with balche, a mild ceremonial drink made from fermented bark and honey. You sip it gratefully. It tastes like tree and patience. Perfect post-eclipse fare. Back in your workspace, the shadows have shifted, but the heat still lingers. You settle in and unroll a fresh sheet of bark paper. Time to begin the next chapter. This one is about a ball game. Specifically, the infamous match played between two rival city-states whose kings both claimed descent from the same crocodile. The outcome was a draw, but both sides insisted they won. Predictably, both scribes recorded different versions of the match. You'll be drawing both. You sketch the curved ball court lines first, careful to mark the stone hoops. Then come the players, exaggerated for effect. One team tall and slim, the other short and barrel-chested. For humour, you give one player an extra long nose. Maybe it'll be noticed. Maybe not. But it makes you smile. As the ink flows, so do your thoughts. You remember your own childhood games, using fruit pits as balls and turtle shells as goals. You were terrible, always tripping over your robe. But you liked the rhythm of it. Run, pass, leap, fall, laugh. The rhythm again, The codex you're making will record this match for generations. It's not just sport, it's culture, pride, maybe even prophecy. You pause to wonder what future scribes will think. Will they recognize your signature style? The little curl at the tail of your jaguar glyph? Will they argue about whether this scene was drawn from life or imagination? Historians still debate whether the ancient ball games were ceremonial blood sports or just really intense leagues with prestige and drama. The truth, you suspect, is both. Everything sacred has a bit of fun in it, and everything fun, a shadow of the sacred. As twilight approaches, the parrots return to their gossip. The monkeys begin to rehearse their nightly complaints. You stretch, roll your shoulders, and blow gently on the page to help the ink set. Another day, another record etched into time, and all around you the world turns, still. The air tonight is thick with the scent of roasted cacao and rain-washed limestone. Somewhere off to your left, someone is lazily playing a flute. Just 4 notes over and over, like the sound a dream might make if it forgot what it was supposed to be doing. You're sitting by the low, flickering light of an oil dish, staring at the last page of a nearly finished codex. It's a scene of trade routes, glyphs and lines crisscrossing like an elegant spider web, stretching from coastal towns to mountain villages, from jade-rich valleys to salt lake outposts. Every line means something. A journey, a promise, a burden, carried in baskets across scorching plains. You dip your brush in dark ink and add a canoe near the bottom of the map, its hull carved with curling snake motifs. A merchant leans out from the prow, holding a fish the size of a child. It's not historically necessary, that fish, but you're told the client has a good sense of humor. This codex is for the Merchants Guild, commissioned to celebrate their founder's 50th birthday. A man with 9 sons, 12 mules, and a laugh that could shake pollen from trees. You've met him once. He tried to sell you a carved obsidian mirror shaped like a duck. You bought it, obviously. As you sketch, you recall a tale he told. How his great-grandfather once traded a single jar of honey for a live tapir and a moonstone ring. That same jar, he claimed, had been blessed by a forest spirit who looked suspiciously like a lost goat. You're still not sure whether he was joking. And yet, those kinds of stories are everywhere. Truth adjacent, myth touched. You suspect most scribes quietly build their work on the backs of these tales, whether they admit it or not. Historians today argue whether early Maya trade was centralized and political, or driven by kinship ties and gossip. The evidence is suggestive. One glyph uncovered in a southern temple seems to read, "Cousin's cousin's mango man." Another, that place with the noisy frogs. Not exactly clean data. You glance across the courtyard to where a few junior scribes are practicing their line work in the dust with sticks. The youngest, a girl with mismatched sandals, has drawn an extremely large jaguar being chased by what appears to be a very determined rabbit. Bold. Not entirely accurate, but bold. You remember being that age. Ink-stained fingers, head full of clouds, and a belief that you could fit the whole world onto a single page. You kind of still believe that. Or at least, you act like you do. It's part of the job. The night deepens, and you pause for a drink of atole, the warm corn beverage that always tastes better when someone else makes it. Yours is a little lumpy. You sip it anyway. Outside, a pair of travelling musicians pass by your window, one with a clay drum, the other with a flute carved from vulture bone. They're singing about a river that runs backward once every 100 years. You lean out and ask them what the river's called. One of them shrugs and says, "Probably something wet." You tip them a fig. Fair trade. The codex is nearly complete now. You add the final symbol, a feathered serpent, open-mouthed, curling around the trade routes like a guardian. Maybe no one will notice it. Maybe it'll be the one thing future historians argue about for decades. You hope so. Your master always said that scribes had 2 duties, to record the truth and to make it interesting enough that someone would want to read it later. The second part, he insisted, was the real trick. Truth, after all, is quiet. But curiosity, that echoes. As your brush glides over the final corner of the page, you realize you're humming the flute tune from earlier. It's grown on you, repetitive in the best way. Like a lullaby from a past life, you stretch your back, which cracks like dry twigs, and blow gently on the last of the ink. The codex is done. 42 pages of careful story, hidden jokes, and solemn ritual. You'll bind it tomorrow, after the glue's had time to set, and the spirits have had time to whisper whatever edits they see fit. You extinguish the lamp with a soft puff and sit in the dark for a while, letting your eyes adjust. Outside, fireflies are weaving tiny, glowing letters across the night. Or maybe just bugs looking for love. Same difference, really. You wonder what it would be like to draw a codex entirely in firefly ink. Probably impractical, but the idea makes you smile. Back, inside, you roll your shoulders and unfurl a fresh piece of bark paper. Might as well start another. This one will be on the myths surrounding maize, how it was born from stone, stolen from birds, and once cooked over a volcano by a goddess who kept forgetting where she put her sandals. You sketch the first glyph, an ear of corn, partly shucked, with little steam lines curling up like incense. The corn looks smug. It should. It's in nearly every origin story you've ever heard. And just like that, you're back in the rhythm. Ink, breath, memory, line after line. The night is long, the stories are longer, and you have nowhere else to be. And now, all is still. The streets have emptied, their stories softly tucked beneath terracotta roofs. The air holds the warmth of the day and the promise of rain, just the way a sleeping city should. Your eyes grow heavier, your breath slower. No, riddles remain. The scribe girl is gone now, but you remember her eyes, the curve of her smile, the calm she left behind. Outside your window, the wind stirs the vines once more. They whisper, not secrets this time, but something gentler, like a lullaby in a language you somehow understand. You shift under your blanket. The walls are warm with memory. You trace, in your mind, the spirals and curves of those ancient glyphs, not to decode them, but to feel them, like waves in sand, like finger trails in fogged glass. Your heartbeat is steady. The city sleeps with you. No more answers, just comfort. No more seeking, just knowing. You belong here. And with that thought, you release the day. You let your body soften into stillness. Your thoughts grow quiet. Even the stars above the city begin to blur, as if they too are ready to rest. You've walked far enough for now. The ink will wait until morning. But this moment, this breath, this hush, it's yours. So drift, so sink, so sleep.